Welcome back to AITSM show. Today we'll be talking about an exciting topic, service integration and management. We are so proud to have Claire Agutter with us, an eminent woman thought leader. She is one of the 50 most influential women in tech and one of the HDI top 25 thought leaders for multiple years. Claire, welcome to the AITSM show. Please let us introduce about your journey, about your story.
Thanks so much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. So, as you said, I work in the service integration and management space, SIAM, but actually my whole career has been in service management. So 20 plus years now, which is quite a long time. So I've done most service management roles in that time. I started on the service desk, like a lot of people do, moved into change analyst and change manager roles. That was back in the days of ITIL version 2. I did some implementation and consultancy roles. And then I moved into training at the same time as ITIL version 3 was getting started. So doing classroom training at the time, but then founded my first business, which was ITSM Zone, and that was focused on e-learning for service management. So at the time, there wasn't really a lot of options in the e-learning space for service management. It was something quite new. So that business grew rapidly, and then 6 years ago founded Scopism, which is my second business. And Scopism had multiple strands. We had the virtual consultancy practice, we were looking at events, but the main thing was content, and the vision behind Scopism was to share content that would help service management professionals, because I've seen, and I'm sure you and your audience have seen, the world has got so much more complicated. You know, back when I first started, there was just ITIL, there was nothing else. Maybe, you know, Prince 2 was around as well. There's ITIL, you know, there's DevOps, SIAM, BRM, COBIT. There's just so much to be aware of. So Scopism, we thought, you know, how can we help service management professionals? And one of the things that we did was work with the community to write the SIAM body of knowledge, and that then has just, you know, really kicked off this whole journey in the SIAM space. So around events, around publications, working with AITSM to launch a global training and certification scheme. So it's just been brilliant, and working with the SIAM community is such a fantastic opportunity.
Right. Our community would like to know first about SIAM, service integration and management, and then probably we'll move towards other topics there. So what is SIAM actually?
How long have we got? I'll try and keep it brief, and there is a lot of good information on the Scopism website as well, which is all available for free. So anybody who's interested can go read there as well. But SIAM started to develop in the UK government, and we're talking about going back kind of 10-15 years. And really the driver was that there were these huge government IT projects with lots of big companies involved, and this feeling really that value wasn't particularly being delivered. Either you had government departments with kind of these monolithic contracts with one organisation, so you got value in some places but not in others, or you were working with multiple big suppliers, but they weren't necessarily working in a joined up way. So the roots of SIAM was this kind of, how do we get past this problem of working with multiple service providers as part of the development and delivery of an IT service? And this concept of service integration was born, which is, you know, let's build a capability that is focused on end-to-end management, holistic management across all of our different service providers. And what that will then allow us to do is encourage our suppliers to collaborate, communicate, you know, not just to be focused on their targets, their contracts. It's much more about how do we work together to deliver value to our customer, because that's good for the customer, but it's good for the suppliers and the service providers as well, because they then have that confidence that the demand will be there in future, that the confidence to invest. So that was kind of the roots of it. But then again, I'm sure most of your audience will be familiar with this concept now, that we're all using external people to deliver either all or part of our IT services, and that could be anything from the giants like AWS and Microsoft through to sort of tiny, really niche software companies. But if they don't all knit together, if they don't all work together, we get stuck. And the really sort of basic example, the simple way to illustrate this is, something goes wrong with one of your IT services, and the ticket goes to the application team, and the application team say, oh no, it's definitely not the application, it must be a database, and it goes to the database team, and they say, no, not us, I wonder if it's to security and that patch they've just done, no, it's not security. And these problems just bounce around because nobody actually wants to take ownership of something that's difficult. Whereas if you switch to working in the SIAM way, you have that service integrator who's responsible for pulling all of these people together and saying, look, this isn't about blame, it's not about penalties, it's about the fact that the customer isn't getting what they need, and how do we collectively address that. And if you can build collaboration at that level, that opens up the door for future innovation, really having all of your supply chain working together. So it's a hugely powerful thing, and what we see at Scopism is it's growing. Interest is growing, take up is growing around the world, because everybody recognizes these problems.
True. Actually, it is even more complex too, right? If we see usual ITSM scenario in one organization itself, right, there are issues like going to hand off to teams and multiple teams involved, multiple security team, incident teams, and all problem management teams are involved. But here, I guess the complexity increases maybe threefold or tenfold, maybe. So,
It does,
so how?
and
Yeah.
I was just going to say that's such a good point that you raised, because I tend to talk about the external service providers, because that's kind of the big issue sometimes. But you do have these internal teams as well, and sometimes what you see is actually we're managing the external suppliers quite nicely because we've got contracts and targets. And then you've got these internal teams who are kind of just doing whatever they want, because there are no contracts, there are no targets, nothing happens if something goes wrong. And actually, those teams get moved into the SIAM model in just the same way as an external service provider does. So what we're doing is looking holistically across the service and managing everybody who's involved. So maybe a slightly different style with the internal teams. It's perhaps more about, the persuasion and building some informal agreements, but absolutely bringing those in, and it's something that maybe doesn't happen in a lot of organizations, and there is this distinction between internal and external. So it's a really good point that you raised there.
True. So the internal teams and external teams, it should be treated as same actually, right?
Yes.
Because we are working for customer. So for
Yes.
customer, we are the one team, being in any organization or any supplier or any vendor, right? So I have like a big question here, like how do we actually ensure the accountability and responsibilities in such an environment?
A challenge, and it's a challenge at all levels, because, for example, at the moment in a lot of organizations, you've got this direct relationship between the customer and each of the individual suppliers. And what we're doing in a SIAM model is bringing in the service integrator to act as the agent of the customer organization. So they need to be empowered, and equally the customer needs to step back, which isn't always an easy thing to do or a comfortable thing to do if they've been used to having that direct relationship. So it depends on the environment that you're bringing SIAM in. You know, if it's a greenfield environment, these things are more simple because, you know, the customer will be either creating their own internal service integrator function or working with an organization that will provide the service integrator for them and then choosing the suppliers. So the roles and responsibilities can be, you know, nailed pretty much from day one, but most of us are not coming into a greenfield situation. We've got existing contracts. Some of them might, you know, run for longer. And what we're trying to do is bring a service integrator into that. And in that instance, so much of it comes down to, I guess, people skills and people management and organizational change management. So once the service integrator is in place, it's building the regular communication, the meetings, it's reinforcing new ways of working and just continuing with that. And it can, you know, it can be really difficult. I think we do the global SIAM survey every year, and we ask, one of the questions that we ask is, you know, how long do organizations take or think it'll take to introduce a SIAM model? And we are talking years, you know, multiple years to have this done perfectly. And during those years, you know, the goalposts move as well, because some contracts will be terminated, new service providers will come in. So it's not something that can be done overnight, but I guess as with any organizational change, it's in the planning and it's in the consistency and just continually kind of reinforcing these new behaviors.
Right. So that's a good point here about culture, or maybe here the main evangelist service integrator there itself. So what are the roles involved there in SIAM?